folks, and welcome to another episode of Sasquatch Out of the Shadows Live. I'm your host, as always, Alex Petikov. I hope everyone is having a good Wednesday night for a change. It's Wednesday, not Monday. I know it's been a little weird lately with the two Wednesday shows we've been doing. I messed up the numbers in getting to 100, so we're kind of backtracking a little bit. But tonight's going to be a really awesome show. We're having somebody on that I've wanted to have on for quite a while. Mr. David Ellis, and we'll talk about that in a minute here, but just want to kind of go over a few things. So Monday night, kind of the regular scheduled show time, we will have our 100th episode. Really excited for that. So I was talking about it a little bit in the past few episodes, just kind of how it's going to work. We're doing a charity fundraiser and a giveaway. So what we're going to do is we have some awesome prizes and gifts and things from some awesome people. We've got so far Emily of the Forest Fleur is going to be giving away some of her awesome Bigfoot beanies. We've got Scott of the Bigfoot Mapping Project. He's going to be giving away a shirt, a tumbler, and some stickers, I believe. We've also got Jonathan Dodd, who does incredible Bigfoot encrypted artwork. He's going to be giving away a signed print. And then we also have Jeremiah of Bigfoot Society Podcast, who's going to be giving away a shirt. I'm also going to be giving away some Small Town Monsters movies, some stickers, other kind of goodies and that sort of stuff. And how it's going to work is essentially we will have 5 different kind of prize bundles, and you put in a set amount through the super chat option to the right there when you're in the chat, and you put in a monetary amount. So we'll start at $5 and probably go to about 20, and every $5 is one your name gets put in the hat once. So essentially what will happen is, if you put $20 in, you get 4 shots. So at the end of the show, we'll draw for those 5 prizes, and we'll pick out the names from the hat. That's how that's going to kind of work. And we're also going to be giving away 3 prizes with some trivia questions. It's going to be some Bigfoot-related trivia questions. And all that money will go towards charity, probably Marlin's Kids. That's what I'm most leaning towards at this point. And that is a charity that works with rehabilitating dogs to work with, to be paired with children with disabilities, as well as first responders, disabled veterans, that sort of thing. So it's kind of like a 2-in-1 where it's not only working with dogs, but you're working with people too. So I figured a fun way to celebrate the 100th show. It's going to be a lot of fun doing the trivia questions and just getting people together, and Emily and Scott and Eli. We're going to have a bunch of people on the show as well. So it'll be a fun, lively kind of show for the 100th episode. And after that, going to be doing a little hiatus on the program here for a little bit, as we'll be pretty busy, and it gets tough doing the streams every week for 100 episodes, but it's been a lot of fun, and you guys are all awesome. So with that being said, just want to take a quick moment here and say hey to everyone in the chat. We've got SoCal Squatch, Mr. Todd Hale. How you doing, sir? He says, what's up, party people? How you doing, sir? We've got Mr. Kevin Hamilton all the way up in Canada. What is going on, man? Hope you're doing well. Brian and Chewy, hey there, man. Brian is our moderator for the chat. Thank you for that as always, man. Hope you're doing well. We've got Outback Orchard, hey there. Peggy Curtis, how you doing, Peggy? We've got Cindy Finn as well. Kaiju Ninja 1985, that's Tristan. How you doing, Tristan? He says, looking forward to this. I am too, definitely. We've got Outcast Jeff. Hello, fellow Sasquatchianians. That one's a tongue twister. How's it going? We've got Sandra Piper as well. How you doing? A lot of people jumping in lately in the chat. Let me just get scrolled down a little further. My Eyes as well. Heather Buck. Hello. We've got Nikki, Harry Man, Hoaxes and Hoodwinks. Hope you're doing well. Brent, the Tall Ones. What is going on? And to everyone else just popping in. Hopefully I didn't miss anyone, but we'll kind of say hi as things go by. We've got Mally Kai. Hey there. So as I mentioned, tonight's show is going to be really cool. We're going to be talking to David Ellis of the Olympic Project, somebody who has done a lot of really interesting audio work. So we're going to talk to him all about some pretty awesome stuff here. So I think without further ado, I'm just going to bring David right in. How you doing, David?
Hey, I'm doing great, Alex. How are you this evening?
Awesome. Very excited to be talking with you here. As I mentioned, I've kind of been wanting to have you on for quite a while. Been familiar with your work, of course, over the years, and lucky enough to meet you and the rest of the folks last year. Yeah,
lucky to meet you.
You guys were awesome, and it was just a treat, talking to everyone. And And I've told Chris this as well. Chris Spencer, he's kind of my go-to for audio, and he'll sometimes say, well, if it's too complex for him, he'll kind of send me your way as well. So you guys do a great job with that audio stuff. But before we get into that, just
Sure.
the basics. I mean, I know you had sort of growing up kind of a little bit of an experience that kind of steered you toward this path, right?
Yeah, yeah. Going way back when I was, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years old. I don't know the exact year or date, but I do know that my grandfather still had his 80-acre farm out near Battleground, Washington. And it was, I'm thinking late 40s, early 50s when this event happened. He was cutting hay on his farm. He had an 80-acre farm, like I said, and so he was. It was hay cutting time, and he said that what looked like a 5-foot tall monkey popped up as he was cutting the hay and ran off through the field, jumped a fence, and popped into the woods. And he said he figured it was about 5 feet tall because the hay was about 4 feet tall, and it was about shoulder height. But he could tell that it was running on 2 legs. And so, Grandpa, where did the monkey come from? How did we get, because we don't have monkeys, right? He says, yeah, we don't have monkeys, but, well, it must have escaped from a circus. Well, what circus was in town, Grandpa? Well, I don't know, but so he saw something that I'm pretty sure, because of its height, he probably saw a juvenile Sasquatch. And the area, now that I know, is kind of well known for having sightings in the area. I mean, it's in the shadow of Mount St. Helens. Yeah. So if that gives you any indication. And then we lived about 5 miles south of my grandfather, directly due south. And the reason I know that is that there's a power line cut that goes right by his property and went in front of our property. But there was a group of us when I had my own personal experience that there was a 40-acre cow pasture that we used to go and play in and divide kids up and run around and do strange things and look for lizards and snakes and I think the strangest thing we found was like a 30-06 that had been stuffed into one of the stumps. We called it the stump field because it had been logged like maybe 50 or 60 years prior to us, utilizing the field, and it had just been turned into a cow pasture. But when they logged it, it left these 10 to 12 foot tall edifices in this field because they used the spring and buckboard method when they cut the timber. They were looking for straight timber. So the stuff near the bottom, as it fluted out, that was useless to them. So they just left it. So it was kind of an interesting, crazy place that we used to go to and entertain ourselves. It was, I believe it was in September that this incident occurred, and a group of us, maybe there was 7 or 8 of us, had gone into the field, and we were walking from one fence line to the other, and the cows were all huddled in the southern end of the field, which I thought was weird, but also good because we didn't have to contend with the cattle.
Right.
So they walked along this western fence line and chewed the underbrush, which created kind of a hanging canopy. The trees on the other side of the fence were onto the over the fence. So there was this one large maple tree that we had come to, and one of the kids picked up a stick and started banging on a limb. Well, when he did that, something inside the brush line, and you couldn't see because it was so thick, started making some trees sway. They were 12 to 18-inch alder trees, and they were really swaying. And that caught my attention right away. And then it looked like something was falling out of the tree, but then I realized no, limbs were being snapped off at about 12 feet in the air. These are good sized limbs too. They're like 2 inches thick.
Huh.
So then something cut loose with a scream that I later described to my parents as a cross between a lion roaring and an elephant trumpeting. And I had actually heard both of those animals in the Portland Zoo. So I had something to reference. Yeah. And what's interesting too is that I have heard unsolicited from other people across the country use that term, that it sounded like a cross between an elephant trumpeting and a lion roaring, because it had a high and a low component to it. It was like two notes or two. It was very, very odd scream. And it was so intense that I remember picking myself up off the ground. I don't remember falling to the ground, but I obviously did. So it was something that went right through you. It was so powerful. I could tell it wasn't an animal that I had heard a cougar scream before, so I knew what that was. We had bear in the area, but it was way too loud for a bear. It wasn't a cow. I know a cow. Been around enough cows at that point in time in my life. It wasn't that. So wasn't sure what it was, but I do know that it scared the heck out of us. And then we all got up and ran back home because it was kind of a frightening experience. What led me down the path that it could have been a Bigfoot actually was happened through a library class. We had a library at our grade school, and we would leave our classroom and go to the library for special teaching. They would teach us the Dewey Decimal System back then, so right. You could find books. And the librarian decided that she had would use this little trick of figuring out what it was that we liked to do, or that we might find interesting to read. She asked us to do show and tell. And then so she opened up the class. Did anything interesting happen this week? Nice. So up shot my hand like a rocket, and I relayed the story I just said. And she thanked me for the story, and I sat back down. And then about 30 minutes later, while everybody was all settled, she came up to me and tapped me on my shoulder and said, "David, come here. I want to talk to you for a minute." So I went with her, and she started grilling me about, what it was that I heard and what did I think it was. And, could it have been a cow? Or she was really trying to maybe get me to, second guess myself, I guess.
Right.
But I didn't. I stayed true to my story. And she says, "Well, I think I have a book that you might be interested in." And that book was Ivan T. Sanderson, Abominable Snowman Legend Come to Life. He wrote that, or he published it, and it came out in 1961. And my incident happened in 1963. So how my librarian knew to get that book and, get it to me and maybe help me understand what it was I heard. Those were her words to me. So
Well,
I
that
thought,
is so interesting.
yeah. So back then, I guess the area, like I said, was kind of well known. So, we're in the shadow of Mount St. Helens, which
Right.
had the Ape Canyon
Of
incident.
course. Yeah.
So, I mean, back in 1924. So I'm sure there was enough lore going around. And
Yeah, that is just it's so interesting that she kind of maybe thought that, or just I guess
yeah,
didn't even allude to it, but just sort of said, "Hey, just check this out." I mean,
right. She didn't say Sasquatch or she didn't, none of that. She just said, I have a book I think you might be interested in reading.
I mean that's realistically that's not even that long after the term Bigfoot first started getting used, right? In the late 50s and
Right.
before the Patterson-Gimlin footage. So
Correct. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is wow, that is absolutely interesting. What a cool experience. I mean, it's just amazing to even remember some of that stuff from such a young age. I mean, those kind of experiences, I'm assuming that probably stuck in your head your entire life.
Well, yeah, the incident did, but following Sasquatch, we had several incidents down near Beacon Rock, which is in Skamania County,
Oh, yes.
that got some write up in the Columbian. That was a Vancouver newspaper, and I would clip those out, and I do remember going and purchasing, and I still have it, the 1968 Argosy magazine article,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was actually written by Ivan Sanderson too. So I don't know if you know that or not, but
Yeah, he was obviously quite active on one of the first on the scene, sort of cryptozoologically speaking. So
yeah,
a lot of that
yeah,
kind of early influential stuff was Ivan Sanderson, and obviously there's Bernard Heuvelmans and a lot that followed suit. I mean, that was even before really the four horsemen of Bigfootery, if you will. So
right.
yeah, what an interesting, I mean, time period to be growing up, especially in Washington, which is now, of course, regarded as one of the best places in the world for reported sightings, right? For just sheer volume and that sort of thing.
Well, here. I went to work for the Forest Service while I was going to college between semesters in the summertime, and actually, I one year I worked all the way through December and took a quarter off, um, and I was cutting trail at Mount St. Helens. So I wish I had the interest that I have now back then.
Right.
um, I can relate another story that I think is Bigfoot related. I know that some people can identify with what I'm going to talk about, but uh, if I use the term zapped, would you know what I was talking about?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when we're talking about it, usually people talk about it regarding infrasound or something along those lines. So
Right, right. Well, I because you can't hear it. I don't know if it was infrasound, but I can
right.
tell you, while I was cutting trail, I had a chainsaw in my hand, and there was somebody that was 50 feet to my right and somebody that was 50 feet to the left of me. We're all working on this trail, and all of a sudden, it's like somebody flipped on a light switch, and I was uh, jolted into confusion and um, desperation to the likes I have never felt. I've been scared before. I know what being scared was, but this was not being scared. This was something way, way stronger than being scared. I
Mm.
mean, it pegged the fear meter, whatever it was. And all I could, it was all I could do to stand there and hold my ground. I kept hearing in my head, drop the chainsaw and run. And I couldn't. I didn't want to be the laughing stock of the crew, so I just stood there and took it, and it was not fun. It lasted about 90 seconds,
Huh.
and all of a sudden, like I said, it was a flip of a switch, and it was gone, and I didn't have a care in the world. It was like nothing happened, and I just stood there and went, "What in the hell just happened?"
Yeah, right.
I didn't know what to think. So another month or two goes by, and it's the last day that we're working on this particular trail, and I volunteered to go to the end of the trail and groom coming forward. I was the last person out, and so I was half a mile away from everybody else. And son of a gun, if it didn't happen one more time. And I just stood my ground. I had a tool, a grooming tool that was kind of a rake and a hoe combined. On one end it was a rake, and the other end it was a hoe. And I just was twirling around, knowing that something was going to jump on me. At the time, I thought it was maybe my senses were picking up on a cougar nearby.
Right.
But this was that dreaded thing again. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody. So
it's I can imagine weird sensation. I've heard other stories of people that it was possibly something maybe Sasquatch related, but of course, the only other really stories I've heard regarding tigers and places like India and those sorts of areas where people maybe have been zapped or had something happen regarding a large predator. So I think it's disconcerting because of course you can't really hear it, right? You just sort of feel it.
Right. Yeah, it's you get the feeling that you shouldn't be there, and that you're in the sights of something, and this is life and death.
It's definitely. We know that there's so many frequencies we can't hear. I was just talking about it the other night, actually. There's a lot of these frequencies that you hear when you're younger that at the same frequency you won't hear when you're older, because as you grow older, you lose those frequencies that you're hearing, you actually end up losing. So
right.
When it's something entirely subconscious in a way, that I think is very, very intriguing. And infrasound, and that even if it's not infrasound, but just those sorts of things, there's a lot there that we still don't really understand about much about at all, really.
Right.
But that is interesting. Thanks for sharing those earlier experiences. And obviously, you've been with the Olympic Project for quite a while now, and the Olympic Project is not unfamiliar to folks listening to the show. I've had various other members on, of course, and but what specifically got you interested in the audio side of things?
Well, let's see. I started going out into the field in 2006. There was a group of enthusiasts that were taking me under their wing, and showing me the ropes, and as it were, the bigfooting ropes. And they were very generous with their help. And I was out in the field every weekend. I just couldn't get enough. I was camping and going different places. Had some interesting things happen, and just was having a ton of fun. But it got to the point where I would relay stories with people, and they would look at me and smile, and you say, "Oh, sure, you had some fun." So I got kind of tired of that. I thought, I'm going to have to step up my game here a little bit if I want to relate an experience that happened in the field. I want to have something to show that it happened.
Right.
And so that means I had to get into recording. Well, it wasn't all just at once. Actually, what happened is, that Christmas in 2006, my kids got me a spy-on device. Do you know what that is?
Spy-on device? I don't believe so.
It's a bionic dish. It's a listening device.
Oh, right. So like, yeah.
Yeah, it was an inexpensive. I'll call it a toy. um, it didn't last too long before it broke, but what it did was teach me that things were happening around me that I couldn't hear with my ear. So it amplified what was going on.
Yeah. Was it the one that had, there was a little kind of telescope built into it?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
all one unit, very small, handheld.
Yes. I do know what you're talking. I have used those actually. We've used a few of those. I just wasn't familiar with the Spion specifically. And I
Well,
always joke around. I call it the hyperbolic dish.
well, I would suggest if people are out into the woods, there's other devices, but if you can find something that's suitable for you that works, it's much more fun to hear what's going on around you that you didn't have a clue what was
Yeah.
going on, and so that really intrigued me.
Something actually I would just really quickly recommend to folks. This is something I've recently just started using where there's a lot of these now electronic headphones for when you're at the shooting range.
Right.
And they actually amplify sound. So what the idea is, a very loud sound like a gunshot is essentially that it goes above a certain decibel level. So those headphones will cancel that out because, when often at the shooting range, you can't hear
Right.
anything if you have heavy duty headphones on. You don't want to get tinnitus, but I
Right.
found those in the field. It can actually be pretty interesting to use.
Yeah, there are gadgets that have microphones for each ear. You do wear them like a headphone, but they have mics that are pointed forward for you. That's a tool that I think people utilizing. What I found was I had a situation where something was flanking our position and something was wood knocking out further in the distance. And whatever was flanking me would knock, and then what was in front of us would knock back. And they successfully got something at our 12 and something at our 6. So again, I had a story, and I decided, you know what, I've got to get this now recorded so I can hear what's going on. But until I had the recorder going, I couldn't show it to somebody and say, listen to this and tell me what you think.
Right.
These were the circumstances. This was what was going on. Well, after I got my recorder tied to the Spion device, so I could monitor what was happening in the field and record it at the same time. I went to this study area that I've been working with another investigator, and when we got there, we heard a wood knock immediately, and so it was like game on. And so got everything all put together and connected and the recorder going. And I actually recorded a back and forth that we had for like 2.5 minutes. And there's later on, I discovered there were yells in there as well. So I had wood knocks and screams at the same time.
Interesting.
But there was an interchange going back and forth. So I have that audio, and I can, talk to people about my experience. And now I've kind of got some proof that it actually happened rather than just a story.
Just a story, right?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, obviously, you have to be very patient. A lot of the stuff you
do, or obsessive compulsive,
because I mean, it's so much of it is, and I've been doing a little bit of it myself. When we'll do multi-days out there, and we'll have audio running all night. So you have to kind of find a way to make it most efficient. And Chris has been so useful in just kind of steering me in the right direction with spectrogram and all that sort of stuff, and even basic stuff like Audacity. But kind of moving a little bit more into that area.
Sure.
how much audio do you think you've if you had a rough number or anything like that of audio that you've analyzed over the years? I mean, is it some insurmountable number or something?
Yes. I know that doesn't make for good interviewing, but gosh.
You get audio sent to you essentially at this point. You get audio sent to you from across the U.S., right?
Yes. Well, from my audio that I originally back in 2007, I've got tens of thousands of hours of listening and audio, and I just put everything, all the clips together, and I have over 8,500 clips.
Yep.
So it's too much. I'm not bragging. I just have so much that I can't keep it all straight. I try, but there's
just a lot. I mean, I know
there is.
In the past, when we've gotten strange sounds out there, and there's one in particular that we had gotten from this place in Minerva, Ohio, that was like this cartoonish bubble pop, and I had sent it to Chris, and he was like, "Send it to David and Monongahela, email it to them," because I'm sure they probably have something similar in their vast, kind of, especially David in the vast archive of stuff. So, very interesting, being able to do that. Now, I do have a couple questions here.
Yes.
From folks in the audience. Paroli asks, David, your recordings are absolutely amazing. Do you plan to upload them online so more people have access to them?
Oh gosh. A lot of what I have is from working with witnesses that wish to keep a lot of their stuff private.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm, I may be able to get authorization to do some of that, but I'm torn because I know what you're asking, and I really would love to be able to get it in a situation where it's on a public format, because there's so much stuff that I think, because that I have heard in my area that I've recorded or with witnesses that have been recorded in the East Coast, and that's what's important, is to be able to follow specific sounds. It appears that wood knocking is all across the country. I mean, that's just a technique that they utilize, and whether it's actual wood knocking or maybe it's mouth pops or tongue clicks,
hand claps or something.
hand claps, or rock on wood, or but it is I kind of have a universal term for it: percussive. If it's striking something, then that's a percussive sound.
Right.
So there's that seems to be a method of communication, and if you think about it, it's probably one of the stealthiest ways to be able to communicate. If the person or the subject on the other end of the receiving understands what that means. If it's two knocks, it means this. If it's a single powerful knock, it means something else. If it's light tapping, it may mean something's closer to between you and I. But there's definitely a communication that's happening for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. Well, thanks for the question, Paroli.
Yeah, I don't know if I answered that. I apologize, but
no, I think you got the point across. I mean, it's tough when you're working with people that, they want their, well, not tough, but you have to respect what people have, their situations. A lot of folks don't want this stuff getting out there, right? They don't want it publicly available.
And then there is some of it is an ownership scenario.
Sure.
I worked with them to get the audio, and I teased it and I found it and all that, but it's still their audio. So, I would need their permission to be able to get it in a library. But that is something that in the waning years of my life, I probably will work toward.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. I do have to say though, you guys have a bunch of stuff on the Olympic Project website.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
And I've actually linked that, folks. If you want to go in the description below, there is both the website to the Olympic Project and there's the audio archives. It's right underneath the main link. And if you click on it, it has a lot of clips, different sounds, and a lot of the spectrogram analysis. You can check that out too. So I definitely recommend checking that out. I figured I'd put that in there just because obviously it's really relevant to what we were talking about. But,
right. But there needs to be more, and I am cognizant of that, and so going forward, I'll see what I can do.
Right on. Now, take another question or two here before I want to move into playing some of the sounds that we were talking about right before we came on here. Mike Casey, who's actually just a fairly recent kind of a guy who's just kind of getting on the Bigfoot scene, very enthusiastic. I believe he lives in Washington now, I believe. He says, Mike asks, is there a certain time at night vocalizations are heard most often?
Yes, they're heard most often when the recorder is off. I'm sorry, but I've had my best audio happened when the recorder isn't going. My advice is, if you want to record wherever you're going, turn the recorder on before you get out of the car, and don't turn it off until you get back in the car. But what I'm pointing out, I guess, is that vocalizations seem to happen at the most inopportune time. And so if you decide that you want to record, I would suggest getting used to recording all the time.
Yeah.
And you can actually, you don't have to use anything any more complicated than the digital recorder. And if you want to protect it from the elements, you can put it in a baggie. It will not affect the sounds as you're recording. So you could protect it and get it out there. So my advice would be to, because of things that have happened to me when I didn't have the recorder going, well, it's not quite dark enough yet. I'd like to get it a little more dark. Whoops.
Been there, done that.
So yeah, the best howls will happen when the recorder is off.
Oh,
That's
man,
Murphy's Law.
It's just somehow it seems to be that way. It says, oh, did you guys hear that? That was great. Let's go check the audio recorder. Oh, it's been dead for 2 hours. Great.
Yeah. I was going to change the batteries, but I just hadn't got there yet.
I figured it would work. Yeah, that's happened to me more times than I can count. So
the one that shows my stupidity is when I leave it in. When you turn my recorder on, it goes into a mode that's not recording. It just shows you what the microphones are doing. So you have to hit it. Yeah, standby. So you have to hit it again to get it to record. I can't count the number of times I've left it in standby all night long.
That's it's that's the stuff that you end up beating yourself up about. And yeah, that's happened to us plenty of times. That happened to me personally, and it's a bummer. But got to be vigilant, like you said.
Yes.
Recording before you even get out.
Before you get out of the car, have that recorder
on
going.
The shoulder, or they'll have it on their hat. I've seen people wear recorders.
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff. Whatever works. I mean. So last question here before we get into playing some of that audio, but
sure.
Kaiju Ninja, this is Tristan. I believe you've listened to some of his audio.
Yes, I have.
From Bumping Lake there.
He's got a great recording.
Very interesting. Yeah, we had him on a few months ago and played some of that audio, and definitely intriguing. But Tristan asks, has David received audio recordings that are similar to the Sierra sounds?
Okay. A couple of times I have recorded chatter that's similar, but most of the chatter that has been recorded is different. It's chatter, or it's sounds that I can't, it sounds like speech and it's in the pattern of speech, but I can't understand what's being said. One time, one of the witnesses that I've worked with recorded something that was very similar to Ron. And funny story is I sent it to Ron, but I looped it with something that sounded very similar. And so he didn't realize that I had looped mine in with his. And when I sent it to him, he says, well, that's mine. I said, yeah, no, I know, Ron. Yours was the first one, but there was one that played right after it, and I looped it so that you could hear that it was similar, but you could also tell it was a little bit different. But anyway, the bottom line is that only one time that I'm well aware of that we recorded something exactly like what I'll call samurai chatter. Now, there's a lot of sounds that were made that I have been following that people might not be following. There is a thing I call percussive speech that I believe that I've heard within some of Ron's recordings. I call it percussive speech because it's clicks and pops and grunts and huffs. But yeah, I discovered that from a recording I captured after somebody had watched a Sasquatch walk between two trees. About 30 seconds later, there was this clicking and popping and drumming kind of sounds. And I didn't realize what it was at the time. I thought it was maybe they had picked up some sticks and were banging it on wood, limbs or whatever. But when I went back and looked at it visually, that's when I discovered that, hey, wait a minute, there's some other stuff that's mixed in with these clicks and pops. And it was grunts and other sounds. So I realized that it wasn't drumming that was happening. It was actually tongue clicks and pops.
Now, if I could ask you about that, I mean, how rapid or how quick were those clicking and popping noises?
Fairly rapidly, fairly rapid.
Would it be indistinguishable to somebody that perhaps wasn't aware?
If you didn't know about this, and I can guarantee you most people are not following it, because I find it in some of the audio that is sent to me that they're not asking me to look at this. They're asking me to look at the scream or the wood knock or the whoop or but there is that it seems to be that there is this percussive nature to some of the communication skills that they utilize. And I think it's more of a stealthy thing that's going on when they're in that mode.
Have you ever heard it almost sound like flowing water or water moving?
Interesting that you should say that. There was one time that it was mixed in with a water creek sound. And I just figured it was something that was close to the water. But the mimic capabilities of these creatures is incredible. And I don't know how far you want me to go into that statement, but I have recordings personally of something calling my dog by name.
Interesting. That is definitely a fascinating area. But the reason why I asked about the clicking and popping is something I've always been interested in. When I first kind of started getting out in the field, 2015, 2016, here in New Hampshire and the East Coast, there was a researcher. I have a documentary of him on my channel. Actually, he's kind of researches from a more Native American perspective, but he had a lot of these recordings that he claimed were Sasquatch language. And take that for what you will, but a lot of it was this click popping that almost sounded like water flowing.
Yeah.
And, what I noticed just looking at it was, I can't obviously say if it was or wasn't, but it would be mixed in sometimes with other strange noises. And it was I'd love to send some of that to you because that's from about 2016.
Write this name down, Tilda, Tilda.
Yep.
The orangutan.
Tilda the orangutan.
Yeah, she is, her home is a German zoo, and they have a recording of her doing tongue clicks and pops. And they figured out that she was making certain sounds for consonants and certain sounds for vowels.
So
and that she was trying to mimic speech, and that was how she did it. So
it's interesting. I mean, it's not that far fetched because there are groups of human beings that use tongue
correct.
clicking and popping.
Yeah, right.
I mean, in
As part of
Africa,
the,
other
yeah,
places.
yeah.
So I don't think it's far fetched. I mean, if this is with this orangutan, I'm definitely gonna have to look that up. But what I found interesting about those recordings as well was I played them for a few other researchers in other parts of the country who said they'd heard very similar things. There was even a guy in Colorado, researcher friend of mine, who said he had heard similar things in his area in the Rocky Mountains. So, and another one in Ohio. So it's interesting. I mean, it's not something you hear all the time, but I find it very curious that you've come across that as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's intriguing.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I look for, and especially if people don't bring it to my attention and I find it, then it's even more intriguing, makes the story that much more credible to me.
So you mentioned the something calling my dog by name story. I think we're going to have to go into that. That is definitely intriguing.
Okay, well, let's see if I can keep this short. I had been working this area for maybe 5 or 6 years with a witness, and I went down there with my wife, and we met the witness at our normal location, and we walked in, and this is when I had my bionic dish. I had kind of upped my game to a better dish and a better audio recorder, and I was kind of laying back, and while my wife and the witness went forward with our dog Kaya, and I was hearing something that seemed to be walking with my wife and friend ahead of me, and I just stood there and listened to whatever it was that was flanking them. And then they stopped and were probably 100 yards apart. And they turned around and saw that I hadn't moved. And so they just stood there watching me. And I signaled to them with a couple of fingers that I was hearing walking. I started doing this, and then I got puzzled looks like, what? So the witness came back to me and said, what's going on? I said, there's something over there that's following you guys. And so I just went back with him and met up with my wife and dog. And we continued walking along, and I was listening to whatever it was that was paralleling us in the brush. And we got to another location and we stopped, and it was a hot summer day, and Kaya was just stood there panting and was kind of drowning out the sound. So the witness decided that he was going to leash her up and take her away. And he got the leash and he called my dog. He said, come here, Kaya. And inside the brush, about a second later, comes Kaya. It wasn't exactly the same, so it wasn't an echo. And you can tell by looking at the visual signature that they're two different signatures. They're not even close to being the same person. So something repeated what my witness said in hailing the dog.
And did they tell you what the reaction of the dog was then? What Kaya had?
Kaya, she was oblivious.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she wasn't scared. I have another incident, same location with Kaya, that we got surrounded by something. 3 things actually came barreling down on us, and then as we left, we got screamed at. So, and I think that incident happened after the calling of the dog. So, I mean, there's a lot of straw man stuff here is going on, but I suppose if they had an interest in the dog, they would have showed it by calling the dog by name.
Right.
And then when we went back there at another time and had another incident with, like I said, that we were being three things were coming at us from three different directions. She reacted that particular time. She took off on me when we first got there, and then she came running out of the woods with her tail between her legs and really didn't want to go anywhere. She stuck right by my side the rest of the trip.
It's just interesting. I mean, that's something I've heard in a few other cases as well, where that level of mimicry gets to where the dog is being called. I mean, that is just
to
curious.
To even drive that point home further, there was a witness that I worked with that had three different dogs, and we have it recorded calling the dogs the three different names.
Wow. It's absolutely, fascinating. And what some of these audio recordings, I mean, are just so interesting. And yeah, so this is Brian brings up a good point. He says, always watching my dog on the trail to watch his reactions towards sounds out there hiking. And I've been out with Brian, and his dog Chewy is awesome, and he's kind of our squatching dog when we're out there. But it's so curious. I mean, something that has the ability to do that. It's not, it's like we've all heard parrots do that sort of mimicking. I know crows can do a very interesting sort of mimicry.
Right.
Something that's almost human-like is I think probably disconcerting for a lot of folks.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those that, it's very hard for me to admit that it happened, but I got it recorded, and I don't know what else to say other than.
Yep. You have the recording. I mean, that's kind of speaks for itself, right?
Yeah, it's not perfect evidence, but it kind of makes the suspicious meter go up a little bit.
Yeah, right. It's not something you can definitively say this was
no
Sasquatch, but hey, tell me what did this? What was doing this?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Now, speaking of recordings, I'd love to transition into maybe if I could pull your screen up and we could start talking a little bit about some of these interesting sounds here.
Sure.
So I'm going to pop up the screen. So just to preface it, these are sounds I don't believe they've ever really been publicly played before. And they're from, I don't know if we should mention where they're from.
Yeah, I can kind of, I had a witness that contacted me a couple of years ago in Alaska that had heard that I could do sound analysis, and would I be interested in listening to some things that he had recorded, and I said yes. And so he sent me something, and it very definitely was a good whoop that he had recorded. And so I asked him to continue to do recordings, which he did, and he was able to. I've got 500 or 600 hours worth of audio that he has sent me, and out of that we've got some clips. Now there's a lot of wood knocking that happens in this particular location, so a lot of the clips that I have are of wood knocks. I've just got some samples of that in the audio that we're playing. But the other thing that happened at he was there was an unfinished cabin. They're still working on finishing it. I think they're pretty close, if not all the way done.
Yeah, it's pretty well along.
Yeah, but when they stayed there, often something would slap the cabin, and so I've got that we'll hear. When he would leave a recorder going, there were times where he left it and there was nobody there. They left too. So he would get the recorder going, and he had a deep cell battery so that the recorder came on at a certain time and turned off at a certain time. And when he came back, he would have like a month worth of audio recorded.
Right.
So, and during that time, and this location is very, very isolated.
Yes.
You can't get to it. Well, you can, but you'd have to hike over, 50 or 60 miles of mountains.
It would be, yeah, it would be, I think it would be quite a feat to be able to pull that off.
Right. And
there's
we're
no
talking
roads to this area, basically.
No. So he gets to the cabin by water. So you could hear a boat coming in if there was another boat that was there. And that didn't happen on these recordings.
Yeah, right.
And he would get some mumbling, some things talking in the background far away. But you can tell that it's voices. You can't tell what's being said, but you can hear voices where no voices should be happening.
I've been hearing some of these sounds for about a year now, ever since I've actually been in contact with this person as well, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to prime anyone about, I find them to be very intriguing. Some of the most interesting stuff I've personally heard.
Yeah, the story is not over at this particular location.
Definitely
but we definitely need to keep his privacy. So
yes, of course.
We don't want to infringe upon that. But he may be out there listening in the audience.
Yep. And yeah, well, there will be more about that. It's just a very interesting sort of thing. So I'm glad we're able to share a little bit of that now. And
sure.
So whenever you want to play any of that, or
okay, so do you want me to play it here on my end? Is that
go for it? It should work fine.
Okay, so are you aware of the term pareidolia?
Yes.
Okay, well, so I believe that there's also audio pareidolia, and we'll see if I can prove it. What this first clip that I'm going to play. It sounds like somebody is sneezing, achoo. So now that I've framed that, if you hear that, it's probably because I said this. Right. So you may not hear that, or you may hear it now that I've said it. But anyway, it was just a very odd sound, and it reminded me of somebody sneezing a little bit. So this is going to repeat 5 times. So go ahead.
The classic David Ellis loop, as I call it, with the and I
well, do you know
you have some great titles. I mean, a lot of the very creative titles and very interesting.
So the reason I do a 5-time loop is that if you just play the sound once, typically people will ask you, "Could you play that again?"
Yeah.
Because your mind doesn't quite understand what it is that you're hearing until about the 3rd time through. And then I do 2 more times to give, because sometimes our mind wander a little bit and you're thinking about what you're hearing. And so if I loop it 5 times, you get a pretty good feel for what it is that we're trying to draw our attention to.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on to, this is a cabin slap. So yeah, I think I have some knocking sounds here, so you'll be able to hear kind of the difference. But that was sounded more like an open-handed slap on something rather than a piece of wood banging on something or a rock banging on something. Okay, so let's go to this is kind of a gibberish voice with a couple of grunts in there. So could you hear some attempt at phoneme streams there?
It's that one creeps me out. That's I just heard that for the first time the other day when you sent it, and I had not heard that one previously. And
well, that really deep baritone voice is not a one-off. I've recorded that type of a voice, not me personally, but I've had it sent to me from Alabama and in North Carolina and here in Washington State. So I'm just going to throw this out here. I don't know. Anybody else's guess is as good as mine, but the voice is so deep that I think that could be like the male alpha. And the male alpha would be present in any grouping. So if you're recording with a grouping, you're probably going to at one point in time get a sound similar to that.
Interesting. Yeah. Very creepy, like I said.
Yeah. No, it's unearthly. Okay. This is going to be a percussive sound. I said kaboom, so it's probably a fairly loud knocking sound. And then I believe there's some mumbling going on afterwards. So I know it was difficult to hear over the lapping water at the water's edge, but that was something obviously farther away from the recorder that could only pick up the conversation. But I can tell it's a conversation. I just haven't any idea who's conversing, because people shouldn't be there, and statistically, I just know that when it was recorded, the person that had their recorder going, they weren't there. So,
right. Yeah, it would be very unusual for somebody to be out there, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Well, I just don't know how they would have gotten there. I mean, we would have heard the boat with the recorder,
right?
So.
Yeah, I've studied the area pretty intensely as I can, just without having been there, and it would be quite a feat to get out there and undetected, as you said, especially. And that one I've heard just that initial part. I believe in some of the other clips you sent, where you can. To me, it sounds almost primate-like with this sort of
right,
something like that. I don't know.
Okay, let's move on to Rock on Wood. I think this will be pretty easy to determine why I think it's Rock on Wood. So let's move on to the next one. It's another percussive sound, but it's combined with something that I've heard in every study area, and that's the hey, something saying similar to hey, and that's all over North America. Whatever this hey makes this hey sound.
Mm. It's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to save my comment until after this one. I'm not sure if this is the one, but I do have an observation that I'd like to see if anybody else in the audience may have heard this type of voice before. So I don't know if you caught the similarities in this between that and the other gibberish that we've heard, which to me means that it's probably the same cast of characters.
Mm. Interesting, yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. You know what a clave is?
I'm not sure. A clave?
Yeah, it's a musical instrument. It's
okay.
The two round sticks, if you will, that has kind of a musical quality when you tap them together.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. This particular sound, again, is one of those that I've heard all over North America, which makes me wonder if this isn't a mouth pop.
Very clunky kind of sound.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, interesting.
Right. It's got kind of a musical tone to it, if you will. But the more I think about it, if I were hearing it all across the country, North America, then it's most likely being done by some sort of a tongue click or mouth pop or something like that.
Yeah, that one's definitely an intriguing one.
I'm going to jump into. He did get a nice long howl recorded.
That one's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're wondering, well, is there anything here that's can point us a little more towards Sasquatch? This would be the one. So that was the same howl looped 5 times.
Yes, yeah. That I remember. That's one of the first ones I had heard initially when I was in contact with this person, and you just hear that sort of echo off of that, almost like a reverb.
Right.
Um, and looking at the type of wildlife that's in that area, I don't know. It's tough to imagine what it would be.
Right.
Of known animals.
Well, he captured an interesting whistle, and I call it long whistle because it is longer than the typical whistle that I've recorded. But it is obviously a whistle. So, Alex, what makes that sound?
Some sort of tropical bird.
Yeah.
There's just not a whole lot that really makes sense when you get something like that. You sort of start exhausting the possibilities.
Right.
And of course, I've said this plenty of times in the past, wildlife can make a lot of weird noises that you don't expect, but you get to a certain point that it's tough to imagine what known animals would do something like that.
I guess you'd have to start with a pika. But I think those are short, chirpy things, not long.
They're very kind of high pitched. We saw some out in actually we were looking when we were in the Mount Hood area with some of the guys from the NABC. That we went to a possible kind of Glenn Thomas site where there's the we saw the little pikas, and I could hear them kind of chirping, and it's pretty cute. Cute looking little fellows, but definitely not. That was a whistle, and not everyone, humans, can whistle either. So
and that was
very, very loud, or it sounds sustained. I mean,
it's loud and it's undulating. It's not it goes down in pitch, so which is interesting, and very much to me sounds like a person doing some sort of a whistle, but I don't know many people that whistle like that.
I think your dog is attempting to.
Yeah, she's
herself.
She is whistling herself. We call that a whistle, don't we?
Dog whistle. That's great. Oh, that's wonderful.
Okay, let's move on quickly here.
Absolutely.
We'll see what this says. This may be the one that I'm thinking of. So that one has me stumped.
That one is that's the one that I think that I was referring to earlier. That's almost primate-like.
Right. Almost. There's that word, almost primate-like.
Right.
Okay, let's move on. That has almost kind of a musical quality to it. And there is a category that I'm following that other people are now following as well that I call singing.
Yes.
And in every area that people are having activity, sooner or later, you're going to hear something with sort of a musical quality to it.
To me, it almost sounds like there was maybe one individual closer and one further. I don't know.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right.
When it comes to the singing, though, I definitely have some interesting stuff to steer your way. I don't know if you've heard them, but Connor Anderson of the NABC got some pretty interesting stuff in an area.
I don't think
NABC. Yeah, he got some stuff. Well, what happened was this past summer when we were in Oregon in 2021, our buddy Ron Reed, he was camping out in an area near Mount Hood, and he got these weird singing kind of recordings almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we were at the NABC, we played them for Connor Anderson, and Connor was very intrigued, and he asked where that had happened. And turns out the location where Ron was, Connor had recorded a very similar audio from 2 summers ago around the same time, 2 years in the past, within like 5 miles of where Ron was, and completely unbeknownst to each other until they happened to link up. So
yeah, that's why I love recording. I mean, where we're finding similarities between vocalizations, where we can kind of get a vocalization type. So
now I have one request for some of the sounds here. Do you happen to have the baby sound?
You mean that was recorded in Alaska?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry. No, I didn't. I've got two more left to go, and I don't think that's one of them. Sorry.
Okay.
This next one is also an interesting sound that is being recorded all over North America, and compare it to the real thing. And the real thing is a gorilla chest beat. They're very similar sounds. So this was recorded in Alaska, and last I checked, no gorillas. And I'm going to play that again. There's another sound that's associated with that, and I think that is an maybe a grunt, but it has a percussive tone to it. So there's the slapping sounds, and then this other sound. Let's see if you pick it up.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it almost sounded like a, I don't know, just a thud there. If it's kind of at the end there.
Yeah. Well, that thud would be a.
Interesting. Let's see here.
Okay, here, got one more here for you. Yeah, I just don't know what that is.
It's just I mean, it's very deep. That's what's a lot of these are just so deep. It's hard to imagine. I mean, there are a lot of very interesting animals, obviously, in Alaska. I mean, they have some of the largest critters in the land, but that doesn't necessarily match anything that I'm familiar with or heard things like that.
Yeah,
other than a suspect species.
Yeah. Well, said species could be 10 feet tall with a 4 foot wide shoulder girth.
Right.
And
if there were a place for it, Alaska would absolutely be it for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I actually do have the baby sound.
Go ahead.
Are you okay with me playing it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna just pop it in as a video file here, and then I think it is looped actually. Let's check it out. Actually, here I have a louder version. I'm going to play that.
Oh, wow. That was pretty loud.
So there it is.
Yeah, somebody took its sucker away. So,
so I mean, I see in the chat, I see Nikki has popped in a Fox symbol that is possibly Fox audio. Now that is something I've thought as well. I mean,
sure,
but
and
I
you can test that out using a spectrogram.
And also the problem is this area happens to not have foxes.
Right.
So that, and they're just not native to that entire region. So, well, they are, but they've been extirpated. So without getting into more specifics than that.
Yeah. So it's not a 100%, it's not a fox, but the likelihood gets the percentages work in your disfavor. But it would be good to have a fox recording to compare it to, and that's the beauty of looking at things visually. It takes the guesswork out of it. You can tell right away if it's similar or dissimilar by the voice print.
Yeah, and that's something I was going to ask about. As we start wrapping up, just in terms of when using spectrogram, I know Chris has told me a little bit about that and sort of on the decibel levels and how low something goes versus how high it is. That can kind of maybe help you differentiate a little bit in terms of lung capacity. I don't know if you're able to do that or not.
Yes, yeah. What the spectrogram does is it. You know what a waveform is, which is just spikes up and down, and that just tells you the amplitude or the how loud versus how quiet sounds are. It doesn't give you a more in-depth way of looking at it. I compare it to a fingerprint analysis. It's that kind of detail that you can get out of looking at the sound on a spectrogram. Your vertical axis is where it resonates in hertz, and lower on the axis, the lower the sound, higher on the axis, the higher the sound. And then the horizontal axis is time, and then so the contrast tells you how loud or how quiet the sound is. And I'm describing this verbally, and I'm asking you to draw a mental picture, which I may or may not be getting across very well. But everybody should do themselves a favor and look up a spectrogram on the internet, and you'll kind of get a good idea of what it is that we're looking at when we analyze the sounds. So you can tabletop compare. You can have the sound, the suspicious sound, and then the sound that is unknown, and you can record those off the internet and compare the two files side by side, and you can see the differences to the point where you can tell it's probably not the same thing. Humans, for instance, have a very definite look to their vocalizations. And I don't want to give too much away because that's trade secrets for when people say, I think I recorded a Sasquatch, and you can say, nope, that's human.
Right. And that's great to be able to utilize those sorts of tools. And on that note, Actually, a question here from Tristan asks, what software does David use?
I use 3 different softwares. I use to look at the audio when it's sent to me. I utilize Sonic Visualizer. That's freeware. You can download that off the internet. And I self-taught myself. I had a little bit of help from Monongahela getting started, but it's something that you can self-teach yourself pretty easily. You just look at things over and over and over and compare them to known things. If you can record things off the internet and create your own little sound library of certain species of animals, and then compare them on your own. The other software that I utilize is Spectral Layers, and it's a studio quality. It's kind of like Adobe, but it's a little bit different. And I utilize that to enhance some audio where there's a lot of background noise. I can eliminate that without disturbing the sounds of interest. And also it does allow me to clean up some of the audio and enhance sounds. And I do that because a lot of recordings are very, very noisy, and it's just tough to get through it for an audience. I can tell the sound is there on the uncut version, but I just do some editing, and that's the software that I utilize to do that. And then there's a final edit, and the software that I utilize is called Nero Wave Editor, but most people use Audacity, and I got started on Nero Wave Editor back in 2007. So when I tried to utilize Audacity, it was just too much of a learning curve. And so I just stuck with Nero Wave Editor, but I do my final edit with that.
Now, just one more kind of question I had for you, and this is something you've obviously had audio, as you mentioned earlier, that's come from various parts of the U.S., North America. But do you notice a difference when you're getting audio, let's say, from the West Coast versus the East Coast in terms of that ambient noise? Do you notice more bugs, maybe from down south and that sort of thing? And
yeah, the Southeast has a tremendous amount of crickets and bugs, and the Southeast is terrible. But I have my trusty editing. I can.
So you're able to kind of cut into that a little bit. That's what I was wondering, because we get, we have a fair amount of bugs up here in the Northeast during those few summer months, but nowhere nearly as bad as Georgia, Florida, down in those areas. It's crazy down there.
Now, what I try to do is mute it. I've found that if you cut that out, that your ear goes, there's something missing in this file, in this audio. So what I do is I tend not to completely eliminate it. You will hear crickets and other things in the background, but just not to the noise level that it's drowning out what you're trying to hear.
Absolutely. Now, if you're up for one more question, this one. This one is, it's not really audio related, but I find it interesting. Maybe it's more of a question for Mark Marcel, but Kevin, one of our Canadian listeners, asks, one of the more wacky theories about Mount St. Helens region is about Bigfoot possibly using volcanic tunnels to move around or live in. Does David have any thoughts or stories about that?
Well, he may be referring to, there's one tunnel up there, or cave system, called Ape Cave.
Yep.
And there are lots of lava tubes. There's also between Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams, there's a whole lot of caving going on in lava tubes in that area. And interestingly enough, the per capita, the largest amount of sightings with the least amount of people is Skamania County, which
Where
is
that's located. Yeah.
where that's located. I don't
Yeah,
know if that answers the question, but it
sure.
might turn on a light.
Well, it's interesting because those areas were Ape Canyon and Ape Caves. Those are named that far before there was a Bigfoot awareness, right? I mean, Sasquatch was
Well,
seldom a term. I mean, in the popular sense, post 1960.
actually, Ape Cave was named after Ape Canyon by a scout troop in the 30s or 40s, I think. They knew of the story,
Right.
and so they wanted to name the cave Ape Cave, and so it kind of took off. Got some traction, and they ended up getting the name changed. Whatever it was before, it was now called
Right.
Ape Cave.
And it just makes me wonder, if that was, let's say that happened 10 years ago, and there's people know about the word Bigfoot, right? It's kind of a ubiquitous
Right.
term. Would it be
Right.
Bigfoot Caves or Bigfoot Canyon? Because back then, obviously, frame of
Right.
reference was even Sasquatch wasn't really at that time, or Abominable Snowman was not a popularly used or well-known term.
Yeah, well, that was the title of the main story out of Kelso, I think, was the attack by apes on Mount St. Helens. So,
right, interesting.
Yeah.
And then I have one last question for you here, which is audio related, from Joe over at Western New York Bigfoot Investigation. I saw you were just doing your show, Joe. Sorry to step on your toes. I know I don't usually do the Wednesday shows, but he asks, what percentage of audio so far that you have analyzed remains suspect to you, David?
What percentage?
Yeah, if you knew like what percent kind of fit into that suspect categories and suspected Sasquatch.
Okay. Well, I think all of the cuts that I have filed, I consider suspicious, but I think I may be misunderstanding the question, because I know I've recorded lots of known things.
Yeah.
I just don't make clips of it. And known animals, for instance, coyotes are recorded in every area that their suspicious sounds happen. And sometimes I think the coyotes are set off by the suspicious sound. Oh gosh, I know I'm not answering the question, and that's frustrating.
I mean, let's say maybe if I can try to, I kind of know what he's sort of alluding at. Perhaps, out of all the audio you've listened to or analyzed, what percentage do you end up actually putting into that suspect sort of category? I'd imagine personally that would be probably on the low side. I mean, you hear so many sounds of other things, right?
Oh, sure. Well, I'd say that it's probably higher than what you'd think. I'd say that probably 50% of the things that people send me are suspicious. But there's quite a few things, including one time a gentleman recorded something that he thought was fairly strange, and I had to tell him it was a rooster. So, and that didn't go over so well.
Also, I imagine the stuff you're getting sent is primarily probably already suspicious.
Yes.
So it's not like you're just getting, I recorded this in the woods today. Do you think there's something suspicious in here? People probably have a reason. I mean, when I send you stuff, it's stuff that I have a reason to think this is kind of weird.
Right. I guess he is wondering if people are thinking they're hearing something suspicious, but it's really a coyote or a wolf or a peacock or, a
rooster,
nighthawk, or a rooster. And yeah, there are those times, but I'd say that it's like I said, it's probably a higher percentage than what you would think that I'm getting that is suspicious, and that I'm going to say it's in the 50% category. But there are times when it becomes pretty obvious that, to me, that the spectrogram shows that it is a match for something that is known.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, I do really appreciate you sharing that audio. I mean, that is some obviously, as you know, kind of behind the scenes, really just
Right.
fascinating hearing that kind of stuff. And um, it's
Well,
intriguing. I don't know. I mean, what to really make of it.
well, this is just the beginning for this particular location. We're going to get a ton more. I can guarantee you that.
Yes,
Um,
and we will be going out there at some point. That's all I can say. But
yeah, we don't want to go too far with
yeah,
that.
I don't want to be being very cryptic about it, obviously on purpose, because
Sure.
as you mentioned earlier, just with a lot of the people you work with, obviously they want to maintain that veil of privacy. A lot of these people want, and probably rightfully so, want nothing to do with the online Bigfoot community and the shenanigans, and they just don't want anything to do with the subject, right? They maybe have something interesting going on, and they would prefer to just remain anonymous, which I mean makes sense.
Well, it's their personal home. It's their personal property.
Yeah.
And, when things happen on your own property, there's not many places you can go. When I'm working with a witness and things are happening on their property, I work from the safety of my home. And, it wears and tears on the witness. All of this. This is a heavy load, and people are excited in the beginning, but after 3 or 4 years, it becomes something else. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. It can get overwhelming. I mean, I've heard
Yes,
stories of people selling those kinds of properties and moving
yes,
somewhere more suburban or not wanting anything to really do with it after a while.
right. Yeah,
Well, David, I mean, it's been really an
yeah.
honor to have you on,
Well,
and
thank you. It's been an honor for me to be here.
yeah, thanks so much for coming on. And we
Sure.
appreciate obviously everyone in the chat as always. A lot of great
Yeah,
questions,
yeah,
fantastic questions and comments, and great to see everybody out here. Of course, on a Wednesday. Like I said, usually the show is Mondays, but it was a lot of fun to be able to do this and talk to David and we'll be in touch, of course, David.
yes.
Lots of interesting stuff and beyond that down the road as well.
Okay.
We hope to get back to Washington, of course, at some point and go to Abe Canyon too. That's
Yeah, there you go.
we have that on the docket at some point too. So
Yeah, get a personal charter with Mark.
that's exactly what we've kind of been hoping to do. And obviously Chris and Rebecca are kind of in that area too. So there's
Yeah,
the whole Mount St. Helens area obviously has a lot of lore and a lot of stories over the years. So just and anytime any excuse to get to Washington, why not?
yep.
With the beautiful country you guys have out there. So aside from that, I mean, is the best if people do have something, let's say they want to send you, and I don't want to have
Yeah,
people just massively sending you stuff, but if there's something interesting,
sure.
how should they go about that?
You can, I have a contact at olympicproject.com. I'm listed there. And if you can send me a short clip via email, that's my preference. I will get back to you. So,
So I
yeah,
have that linked in the description, guys. That first link says Olympic Project website. That is what he's talking about to his contact page on the site there, and then underneath that is the audio archives as well. So
sure.
check those out. Yeah, again, thanks everybody in
Yeah.
the comments for
Thank,
questions and all that kind of stuff in the chat. Hope everyone had an interesting show. It certainly was fascinating for me, and I would love to have you back on at some point in the future, David, when we
oh, love to. Thank
hopefully
you.
we'll have new stuff to discuss for sure. And
Okie doke.
this was absolutely great. So yes, guys, as I said at the beginning of the show, this coming Monday is going to be my 100th show, and we're going to be doing this charity fundraiser giveaway event. So hope to see you guys all there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Like I said, we're giving away some awesome prizes and just raising money for a good cause. So it'll be a good way to kind of end the show on a high note with 100 episodes. And after that, I will be taking a little hiatus for a little bit. But aside from that, everyone have a great rest of your Wednesday night and a great rest of the week. And we'll see you guys all on Monday. Have a good night, everybody.